everyone. I'm Signe Youngsted of Group NAO, and I want to thank you for tuning in to today's exciting interview that we're doing with European Cities Marketing as part of the A New Tomorrow series. And today we're zooming in on the MICE industry, a part of our business and industry that has been very hard hit with the coronavirus, the pandemic. First with a wave of cancellations and postponements of major events, conferences, trade fairs, and now looking towards a new tomorrow where people have become increasingly used to digital meetings and hybrid solutions. And so who better to look into that new tomorrow of the MICE industry than meetings expert and CEO of IMEX Group, Carina Bauer. Thank you very much, Carina, for taking the time today to talk to us.
Welcome, nice to be here.
Nice to meet you. So in mid-March, IMEX Frankfurt 2020 was cancelled, which I know was a huge decision. And then mid-May, you launched this new virtual universe called Planet IMEX. So could you tell us a little bit about sort of the process, how to turn everything around, and the ideas and the purpose that went into launching this new universe?
Yeah, so about a week after we cancelled the show, we gathered as a team to talk about what we could do to in some way replace what was lost by IMEX in Frankfurt. We knew we couldn't fully replace it, but we really looked at the community connections that would be lost. And we also knew that the industry was hurting a lot, and we wanted to give something back to the community. So we framed it as a gift, so that was very important to us. That was kind of a guiding principle. We wanted to drive connections, we wanted it to be unique, and we also wanted to do something that was a bit fun and a bit joyful. And so those were the sort of key priorities that we identified in order to create this experience. And as you say, the other thing that was important to us was, of course, online, it's relatively simple to provide online education and content, but we didn't want it to just be education, because our show isn't just about education. We have a very successful and large educational program, but it's not just about that. So we wanted to create this fuller experience that encompassed a very strong educational program. I mean, our Edu Monday Live was 40 sessions on one day, 30 speakers, 4 concurrent tracks. We also had a community day where our partners were delivering content all through the day, but we also had fun things like the IMEX Run, and we also brought in things like IMEX Introductions and Conversations with Brella to really focus on those peer-to-peer connections and discussions that take place in a live environment. So, and then of course how we designed it was a very joyful, fun experience for people using gaming technology. So we kind of brought all of those things together.
And why was because that's one of the things that I really took note of when I was exploring the universe a little bit, and that was the fun element, that it was very much a different kind of universe. And so why was that important to you?
Because you know, any live event, whatever it is, and IMEX is a hugely business focused event, but it's fun as well. People enjoy coming, and also the community was hurting and people were really devastated. They still are, and certainly in May everybody was still in lockdown right across the Western world. So we really felt that that element of joy and fun, and also our talking point this year and next year is nature, so we wanted to bring that into the experience, and we wanted to just give people a different experience, and that uniqueness was very important to us as well.
Yeah, it really does stand out. It surprised me in a very positive way going into the universe. How has it been received? Are people using it? Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's been received really well. As you say, I mean, that first element is surprise. I've been on the calls with a couple of people and watched them as they've gone into it. And of course, people don't expect it to look like that or be that kind of experience. So you can see kind of people smile as they go into it, which is really lovely to watch. Yeah, so it's been really well received. It was really well received in May. We had 20,000 unique visitors to the site within the first week. We had 12,500 participants in the sessions. That's across, we had about 5,500 unique people, but they attended 12,500 sort of seats in sessions. We had 1,500 connections made through the Brella system. So, you know, overall it's been really well received, both the anecdotal feedback, but also the stats that back that up. So yeah, and I think people felt that what we managed to do did bring the community together. So that was what was really, really important. There was a buzz on those days. There was excitement during the education sessions, for the IMEX run on social, and just, you know, people interacting with that content. So yeah, we've had outstanding feedback.
And were you already playing around with some of these concepts before the crisis, or is it completely born out of, you know, cancellation? What do we do now?
It's completely born out of the crisis. And so, you know, I'm in awe of our team who just pivoted so fast. What we were doing was kind of brainstorming how we could do things differently on site at the shows for some of the content. So some of the sort of conceptual ideas came out of those brainstorms that had taken place over the past few months. We'd also spent some time over the past few months before the crisis thinking about our 5-year strategic priorities. So that was helpful in sort of giving us guiding principles. And we had also made contact with the company who built the platform. We didn't know what we were going to use it for, but we had seen it and we thought it was interesting. And our team happened to have a meeting in the diary the week of our cancellation with that business. So that was a bit of serendipity in a way. And so that kind of all came together to allow us to move very quickly.
And so now that you've, because I think I've seen you somewhere quoted saying that it's a time to experiment and learn, because if not now, then how, in terms of digital and technology. And so what will you say that you have learned, and is there anything from this sort of born out of the crisis, but that you will take forward as well in the coming IMEXs?
Yeah, so I think, as you say, you know, the freeing thing, the amazing thing really is that as a result of this, we could do anything. You know, anything that we put out in May as a replacement was positive, and it allowed us to try. I mean, we sort of knitted together 5 or 6 different technology systems, so we were able to like really see what worked and what didn't work. I think the interesting thing, of course, is for all of us in the meetings industry, we're going to have to learn how to take that learning from this fully online world back into our live and hybrid world. And what does that mean? And I don't have all the answers for that, except to say that absolutely, you know, what we've built, we're proud of, and we want to continue that journey. But what we're discussing now internally is, what does it really mean ongoing with our live shows? So I can definitely see that we will continue on this digital path, but we'll continue it with a view to enhancing and improving the live shows, or extending those live shows, not as an instead of. And so that's really where the trick will come, and I'm sure we'll find ways to make that work well, and I'm sure we'll learn from our mistakes as well. But I think that's okay. I think people are happy for everybody to try, and to a degree what we'd like to do is try lots of things and give the industry that knowledge and say, this worked but this didn't. And we're very happy to experiment on behalf of others.
Right. Yeah, because I think there's so much talk of like, well, in the beginning, everyone was very caught up with this, like, now we can meet in a digital world and it will replace entirely everything else. And then I feel now everyone's saying, oh, they're kind of sick of meeting in a digital way, and they want to go back to meeting in a physical way. But I can't help but think, is that just because it's so new to us and that we haven't entirely figured out how to make full use of these formats? Like, you know, in the early days of email, everyone would say, you know, they're not used for anything serious. And then now, you know, we hardly ever send old school snail mail anymore. Will this be the future of meetings as well, do you think, once we learn how to do it?
I think there's a big difference, and I think the difference is human nature. So, you know, people come together for business meetings, for fun activities, to meet your friends in the park or go for dinner. People want connection with each other in a live environment because of our human nature, because of the need for us to connect and meet with others. And we all know that when you meet with somebody face to face, it's very different to placing a phone call or meeting over a system like Zoom. So I think to a degree, though, you're right, in the sense that, of course, we're at the early-ish stages, and I don't say we're right at the beginning, because let's be honest with ourselves, this technology has been around for a good 10 years. You know, it's not as if suddenly the crisis happened and Zoom was invented, or GoToMeeting that we're using today. We've had an account for webinars since 2007. So, you know, this technology has been around for ages, but why haven't we used it? We haven't needed to, because people prefer to meet face-to-face, and we could. In this environment, we can't meet face-to-face, so of course everything's online. I do think that as a result, the technologies will develop, our use of them will develop. So you can see already there are sort of more networking focused technologies being beta tested, which are not as stilted as a Zoom. I'm sure those will grow. Also, as meeting planners, we're learning how to develop events that are more than just a talking head. So I definitely agree with you that we'll learn to use these better, but I still don't believe that they can fully replace that human connection that we crave, because we're human beings.
And so, like, moving forward also from digital technologies, because then imagine now that we can meet again in the physical world, and it will be hybrid solutions, so we'll be integrating some of the digital solutions that we've now discovered, gotten used to, you could say, have become more popular. What else will change apart from the technological aspect of it? Because now we're talking about human connection, but we're also, you know, in a socially distanced world. We all do hand sanitizing all the time. How will that change meeting at the IMEX in 2021, for example?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, again, I would say we don't have all the answers today, but what we are, of course, looking at with our venue and with help from the industry associations is, what does the show look like? How does it run in this new reality? So health and safety, sanitation are going to be the top priorities. The other thing I think as both trade show organisers and meeting organisers we need to look at is, how do we reduce crowds? How do we reduce the number of people in a small space at any one time? And so that is going to have knock-on effects for the overall experience and the flow of the show, and capacities in the show, or capacities in the education. So we're looking at all of that right now. We're obviously excited and interested to look at some of the trade shows that are starting up and are planned for later in the year, or in continental Europe. You know, in Germany, they're certainly starting trade shows in the autumn. So, you know, we'll be looking closely at all of those. You know, and there's everything, isn't there, from having hand sanitizers available, to asking people to wear masks, to having clear perspex screens, to making aisles wider, to, you know, all sorts of things are being discussed. I suppose what we're also trying to look at is what is relevant today and what's likely to be relevant in a year's time, because that also might be very different, because the world we're living in today is very strict. I mean, you know, in the UK, we've still got a very strict lockdown. Really, we're allowed to meet 6 people outside. That, you know, that's it. So, you know, if we're able to run a trade show for 10,000, 15,000 people, some of those rules will have been relaxed by then. Otherwise, you couldn't run the trade show at all. So we're kind of looking at all of those things. But at the end of the day, we want to be running our meetings and our events and our trade shows. And therefore, it's incumbent upon us as organisers and venues to work very hard to give everybody confidence that they can attend safely, or as safely and in as safe an environment as is possible to organise. And I think that's going to be key for any event organiser for the foreseeable future.
How would you see, well, what do you expect? And I realize none of us have a crystal ball, so this is, we're tapping into your expertise and your experience, but then of course, understanding that no one has all the answers. But I do hear a lot of people saying that there will be less business travel, and that you have to really argue why, legitimize why you have to actually physically go to a meeting or a conference or an exhibition or a trade fair. And so I mean, I'm wondering if you were to, give the good arguments to someone going into their boss's office and saying, no, I really have to go. What do you think will be in the future the good arguments? Human connection, yes. Will the boss buy into that in an economic crisis?
Well, I think, as always, it depends on the event. It depends on the objectives of the person and the business for going to that event. For a trade show, if you're an exhibitor, you go now, or last year you went in order to generate business, and the question is, can you generate the same amount of business online? And I would argue that you absolutely cannot. And I think one of the learnings for what we did in May was how hard it is to engage the buyers with the exhibitors online around business. So right. You can engage people with content, you can engage people for networking, but it's really hard to engage them for business. I don't say that won't improve, and we can learn how to do that better, and they might learn how to do that better, but that's very difficult. It's very different to really being able to sell yourself, your product, display it in a proper way in order to drive those business connections. So that, I think, is maybe simple from the buyer's perspective. What are you going for? Is it purely education that you can get online, or is it actually to enhance your network? Is it to present your company? Is it education that you wouldn't be as engaged in online because you can't have the peer-to-peer discussions in the same way? So right. I think there are lots of very positive arguments, but at the end of the day, it's going to depend on your business reasons for going. We always should have business reasons or objectives for going to an event. So in a way, that hasn't changed, and every event has its purpose, and that hasn't changed. We just need to be a little bit clearer about how we're measuring that. Are we setting the objectives in advance, and is it really enhancing a person, their professional development, or a business for going? I'm involved with the Site Foundation. We focus on incentive travel. You can't do an incentive travel trip virtually. Those companies are organising incentive travel trips in order to motivate individuals within the company to perform better, to improve the bottom line of a business. So there are lots of different kinds of events that, as part of the MICE industry, we organise, and they all have their different purpose, but they should all have a business objective and purpose.
Right. Yes. And then, so yeah, because I think also, of course, now we're talking very much about based on the crisis and the experience of a pandemic, and I think we've already talked about how this has also been like a digital or technological catalyst in many ways. But I'm wondering also now, will it also be a catalyst for more sustainable development? Because I think that's also, even before this crisis, you would have seen an increasing need to legitimize travel, and perhaps especially also business travel in terms of sustainable priorities. So how do you see this? And you mentioned earlier that nature is like the talking point of IMEX 2021. Where do you see this development going, and will the Corona experience somehow affect that, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I very much hope so. I think the world has undertaken a massive social experiment, which is, what does it mean when we all stop? What does it mean when we don't travel and factories are closed? Economically, it's devastating, but we've all benefited from the resurgence of the natural world in some areas, and people have enjoyed that element of it. So I hope it does shine a greater spotlight on our need to work towards the sustainable development goals even quicker. I think you're right, as you say, especially in Europe, there was a growing justification around travel for environmental reasons, add in financial reasons, caused by, the devastating economic consequences of this pandemic, and suddenly it gets difficult. So I think as event organisers and people in the travel industry, we have to be very cognizant of that, and we have to move towards organising our events, or if you're in the travel industry, promoting more responsible travel and moving operations to being carbon neutral. That was something that we have been very strong in doing at IMEX for many years. And it's very important to us. The issue, though, is those priorities also are difficult where you look at things like single-use plastic, PPE that's being used, the disposable masks that are being used, disposable plastic gloves, hand sanitizer, which puts chemicals into the water system. So, ideally, we need to find a way to marry those things, because actually the pandemic itself is going to have a major impact on nature if we're not careful in how we deal with those responses. So, for an example, very simple thing, in March when I was doing my online supermarket shop, trying to find cleaning products for the home, I could access all the ecologically good cleaning products, but all the really harsh chemicals were out of stock. So, that says everything really about how far backwards we've suddenly gone with some of those things. That's not about necessarily event organisers or travel, but it shows that there are a lot of conflicting needs and emotions in the world right now, especially when it comes to sustainable development goals.
Right, yeah, and I think that's probably also why this whole idea of build back better is taking more and more place in conversations and discussions on long-term planning and recovery. So just because time is already running out, and it's been very interesting listening to you, so I'd finish off with a question saying, like, how will IMEX build back better?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I suppose really it's about taking opportunity out of crisis, isn't it? So we now as a team have some time to really think about every element of our shows next year, and that's really what we're doing. We're taking apart everything and talking about how we can do it better. Is it optimally done at the moment? How can we use technology alongside the show? How can we use technology, in safety and sanitation as well? So we're looking at every element of the show. So I suppose I don't have the answers for what will be different next year, but that's something that we're taking really seriously. And certainly on the sustainability front, we already had very strong sustainability credentials. I would say that we're probably one of the most sustainable trade shows in the world, but that's also something we'll be looking at very strongly, and how do we really support nature to build back better.
Brilliant. Let's end on that very sort of optimistic and visionary note. Thank you so much, Carina, for taking the time to talk to us today. Very appreciated.
Thank you. It's great to be here.